Hello everybody, welcome back. We are still talking about Persepolis by Marjane Satrapi. In this video, I want to do a bit of character discussion, character analysis. We haven't done a whole lot of that in these series. And one of the interesting things about reading a memoir is that you do kind of have to create a division between Marjane Satrapi, the writer of the memoir, and Marjane Satrapi, the character in the memoir. And I think anytime you're reading a memoir, I think that's a good moment that you kind of have to make a real conscious distinction between them. Because remember that Marjane Satrapi, the writer, is choosing events from her life to illustrate. She obviously cannot and should not illustrate the entire thing from beginning to where she is, because most of it is probably incredibly uneventful and dull and not really suitable for a good story. So that means that she, just like any memoir writer, is picking moments from her life to write about that she thinks makes a good story, and she is presenting things in such a way that they help to kind of build towards the point she's trying to make about life, and her life especially, right? I think that's important to remember anytime you read a memoir, that is true. So I'm interested in reading about the character of Marjane and talking about the character of Marjane and kind of trying to figure out not only how is she presented in the book, but what does she tell us about the writer's point of view and the writer's understanding of herself. Does that make sense? Because I'm holding on to it. I'm holding on to it kind of here, and I hope that makes sense. But we'll come back to that. So Marjane in the book is, let's start with her as a child, right? As a child, she is just a little bundle of energy and enthusiasm. She says at the very beginning of the book, she says, "I was born with religion." She wants to be a prophet. And she says that very clearly and distinctly to all her adult friends who kind of respond to her the way a lot of adults do to kids with big ambitions. And they go, "Oh, do you? Oh, that's so sweet. Good luck, child." She has these conversations with God, whom she depicts in her room as being the big guy with the big beard and the robes and all of that. And she has these conversations with God about herself and her life. And they go on until, she becomes kind of an older child. And at some point, God doesn't really show up for conversations anymore. But she wants to be a prophet. She starts to hear about the great sort of intellectuals and revolutionaries of Iranian history and intellectuals and revolutionaries of other cultures. Her parents are both deeply political, and she learns about people like, Castro and Che Guevara and all of them as well. And she likes to play with her friends games about yes, I'm Che Guevara, I'm going to lead the revolution. It's very good. So Satrapi portrays her very young childhood self as a person full of energy and imagination and creativity, whose ambitions are well beyond what you would expect like a normal little girl's ambitions to be. And she wants to be someone really, really important. And I think that's one thing that we see throughout the book, is that for a long time in the book, she tries to put her own needs first, and she's not afraid of speaking out on those. And we'll see there's more examples of that as we go forward. But we do see that definitely in the very beginning of the book, where young Marjane really wants to just, rule the world, as she does. But that, of course, is interfered with when we start to see the politics of Iran begin to kind of take a turn, right? The Shah is deposed. Everybody's thrilled about that because the Shah had been pretty much an American puppet up to that point. But the deposing of the Shah leaves the door open for a fundamentalist regime to come in. And this hyper-religious government really doesn't have any interest in little girls' big dreams. And so she finds herself veiled. She finds her school separated. That, before was a bunch of boys and girls going to school. Now it's not. And she's starting to see that girls and women are put under far more pressure and put under far more scrutiny than they had ever been before. And they're told that their options are limited. They are told they must dress a certain way, behave a certain way, and they have to act in ways that are in concert with the way that the government understands Islam to be. And yet, you see young Marjane, child Marjane, trying to push the boundaries of this, trying to kind of push back at these limitations that are put on her, right? Insisting that her parents go out, when they go to Europe, that they bring her back all kinds of, contraband cultural items, that she get punk sneakers, that she get posters and music. When she is confronted by people who are in authority, she talks back to them, right? She is very, very willing to not put up with any of the nonsense of like her school principal or a religious leader. And she shows all the way through her early years this need to, I want to say a need to be right, but that doesn't sound very charitable. But this need to express herself and this need to make sure that her thoughts are her own and that she is standing by what she believes, even if she never really understands what exactly she believes. She just knows that this is something, these limits are things that she must push against, that she does not want to be limited to something. And that's going to kind of come to bite her when she moves to Europe. Because she moves to Europe because she's just, she's made too much trouble at home. Her parents sent her to Austria. And now she is in kind of a world where people don't care so much about what you want to be. She shows up she finds a friend group who are all a bunch of communists and socialists and revolutionaries, coffee shop revolutionaries, as it were. And she keeps trying to push against things, but there's not a whole lot to push against. And so now she starts exploring sexuality. She starts exploring drugs. She starts exploring the things that she never would have been able to do back home. And they don't bring her any real happiness. By the end of her European adventure, she's basically homeless. She's very, very sick. And it is kind of, I don't want to say it's a failure for her, but you find that she has never really, like I said, she hasn't really had an ambition of her own necessarily. She's just always wanted something to push against. And when there's nothing to push against, the way there was in Iran, that's when she starts doing things that are dangerous and unhealthy and unproductive for her. And she kind of sees that time of her life as a failure when she has to don the veil again and go back to Iran. So her return to Iran is an older and smarter character, that she understands what the limitations are. She understands a better sense of when to push and when not to push. And she finds maybe more subtle ways to sort of get around the rules and to kind of get what she wants. But they are, kind of in some ways in cost of her character. There's one scene where she is putting on makeup to impress her husband. I think he's her husband or fiance at the time. And she sees a guy from across the street who's kind of looking at her, because women aren't supposed to wear makeup. Women aren't supposed to wear red lipstick and stuff. That's decadent. And in order to keep him from harassing her, she makes a false claim against him to the police that he was harassing her. The police go up, they grab him. He's like, I have no idea who this woman is. I've never met her in my life. They're like, we don't care, you're coming with us. And Marjane feels very smug and proud that she was able to use the levers of power and use the levers of the state in order to protect herself. And her mother gives her a very stern talking to afterwards, because her mother realizes that what Marjane has done is just fundamentally awful, because she has cost a man potentially his life just for her to allow herself to wear this lovely makeup. So finally we get a Marjane at the end who has kind of settled in, right? She has kind of figured out how to work in Iran, but she's still not right there. She doesn't fit. There's still more that she wants to do. There's still more that she wants to be, and she has to leave and go off to France. And that's kind of where the story ends, is where she's leaving not because she has to, but she's leaving because she wants to, because she understands that Iran is not where she can be the fullest version of herself, and that will be elsewhere. So what is the author now saying about herself? And I think what she's telling us is a story of someone who, honestly, like a lot of young people, don't really know what they want in life. Lord knows I didn't know what I wanted. I thought I knew what I wanted in some ways, and I had no idea that really what I wanted. But I think the story of a lot of people who don't know what they want and who don't know how to get it, and who don't know how to figure it out correctly and how to figure it out in a way that is productive and healthy, that doesn't hurt somebody, least of all themselves. And I think that is the story she's telling us of her youth, is that as a young person, she was confused, she was rudderless, she was angry, I think, at a lot of things, but didn't really have the proper tools to express that to herself, and eventually had to leave her homeland in order to be able to discover who she was. Which is a little sad. You should say, I say that as somebody who has not lived in the United States for almost 25 years. It is a little sad when you have to leave your homeland to discover who you should have been. I'm going to have to sit on that one for a while. Oh, wow. Yeah, anyway, I'll let you know how that goes. But I think it is a bit of a sad story when the place where you grew up is not the right place for you. And the place where you grew up is not the place where you can build your dreams and build the skills that you want to be. And that's kind of what this is a story about, that Iran had become for her a place that she simply could not thrive. And the choice would be to either give in to that, like she did when she accused the man of harassing her, or to sort of admit that I can't be who I want to be here and I have to be myself somewhere else. And so, yeah, I think in terms of how Satrapi presents herself, she's not taking away a lot of the problems that she had. She's not portraying herself in a perfectly saintly light, which she could have done if she had wanted to. She's not portraying herself as a monster, which she could have done if she'd wanted to. She's portraying herself as a complex young person trying to figure things out the way all young people are trying to figure things out. So yeah, in terms of the character of Marjane, I think she's complicated and interesting and relatable in a lot of ways, which again is maybe one of the reasons why this book is as successful as it is. There's a lot of other really good, important key characters in the book, which of course, because they're not Marjane, they don't get nearly the same amount of page time or treatment. But her parents, for example, I mentioned before, her parents were, throughout the text, are incredibly supportive and really, really loving, and very much sort of the quiet rebel type, right? They know how to hold a party where people won't necessarily get arrested. They know how to navigate the world and show little sort of pokes of resistance and how to kind of get what they want to get the right way. You know, before the Islamic Revolution, they were out there protesting against the Shah. They were doing things that they knew were dangerous, and their families themselves have a history of political resistance and political prisoners. And so we see that Satrapi's parents are not really the sort of, I mean, they are sort of eventually kind of go along to get along because they have to, or they or someone they love will die. But they are very, very politically conscious, and they are very understanding that this little girl of theirs can't thrive here. That's why they send her away the first time. That's why they sort of see her off at the airport the second time, is that they understand the reality of this place. They're not going to force her to wear the veil for the rest of her life and to conform to a world that they know she can't thrive in, which is good. Her parents are really nice. Her grandmother is wonderful. There's a lot of great scenes with her grandmother, who, once you sort of reflect for a moment, you realize how much history her grandmother must have seen with all the political turmoil that's going on in her grandmother's adulthood. But her grandma's able to give really good, sort of kind advice to her about how to understand herself, how to get along with other people, how to sort of see the truth within her heart. And you definitely get the sense that Satrapi, the writer, is telling us that she would not have become the person she was if it had not been for her grandmother as a very, very important character in the text, and who is quite nice. Quite a nice lady. I liked her. So yeah, those are some of my thoughts on characters in the book. I know I gave everybody who's not Marjane a little bit short shrift, but the book's about Marjane. It's Marjane writing about her own life, so of course I'm going to talk about her character and what we can learn from her. And I think anytime we read a memoir, I think that's something that we kind of have to aspire to do, is we say, all right, what is this character teaching me about myself? Especially when it's a character that is going through something that I cannot relate to. And I know a lot of people, especially a lot of younger people these days, for some reason, seem to resist stories where their own life is not being represented. They say, I don't see myself in this story, and therefore I'm not interested in it. I think that's a fatal mistake, honestly. I think this is a bad, bad idea. One of the great things about literature and, film and television and all sorts of storytelling media is that we can learn about other people, and we can, in a limited sense, experience other lives that are not otherwise available to us. And they can put our own life in a different perspective. And they can allow us to examine our own sort of thoughts and feelings and experiences in a different way. And maybe in a lot of ways, feel a little bit less alone than if we were just reading our own stories over and over again. So yeah, if you have any thoughts about this, if you've got any thoughts about Marjane's depiction of herself, about her character in the book, and what kind of person she is, and how that relates to you. Did you see anything in that character that really spoke to you, that you identified with? Then let me know. Put them in the comments. I'd love to hear about it. So thank you very much for sticking around. I really, really appreciate it, as always. And yeah, I'll see you in the next one. Stay well.